you today here on, of course, YouTube Live. And today we're going to talk about three jails that we can find ourselves in today. So, Lord, bless our little time together, and we ask it now in Jesus' name. Well, there are three jails that we can actually put ourselves in. You ask the question, okay, what are they? Well, the first one is caring about what others think. It can actually be a real problem. I know that there is a lot of people out there that are submitting themselves to peer pressure in different forms. Now, when you're young, of course, you're confident and you're able to do many things. I love watching my grandson, Caleb. He is such a confident little guy. I mean, he will fall down over and over again, but he gets up and he tries again. One of his favorite things, of course, was climbing. He loves to climb. And he gets up on things and he climbs all over and he has absolutely no fear. But you see, over time, when we fall down, we understand that there are certain consequences to our actions. And at a certain age, wherever that age is, all of a sudden we start caring about what other people think. Now, that's not a terribly bad thing because it can actually be a pressure that can definitely put us in the right direction. For example, we should care about what our parents think, especially when they're young, and we should care about, certain aspects of society. But we can also find ourselves in a prison or a jail of what people think. It can become a really major problem, especially today when it comes to, social media. Everybody wants to look fit on social media. They want to look pretty on social media. And so what happens is you have people doing things on behalf of social media. Did you know that there are hundreds of people that lose their lives every single year because they want to get the right picture on social media? So they hang from cliffs and they do all kinds of weird things because they care about what other people think. And that can really become a major problem and a jail that you can find yourself in. You can begin to care more about what others think than what you actually think yourself. And you become a prisoner to a certain idea, a certain group of people. And we see it being played out, of course, in society over and over again. So you need to stay out of the jail of caring what other people think because you need to develop your own personality. You need to develop your own person. You need to develop what you want to look like, not what other people want you to look like. So you need to be careful about the prison of what other people think. This is, of course, the first jail that you can find yourself in, caring about what other people think. Like I said before, there's a fine line between this and, of course, other people. So you need to say to yourself, yeah, there are certain things that people say that I should take into account. That's called, of course, making yourself accountable. And also, as well, making sure that you have the right people in your life that are going to speak, positive, caring, loving things. Those, I'm not against that. But when you find yourself caring about what everybody thinks. And we've seen lots of, stories in, of course, movies and different dramatic portrayals. It can happen. You can actually care what the neighbors think. You can care more about your reputation than you do about the people that you love. So don't get into that prison. The second prison that you should not do is, of course, living in the past. I want to tell you, when you live in the past, you can't live in the future. When you think about what you have done in the past and you become a prisoner of the past, you know what Paul says? He says, forgetting those things which are behind and looking forward to those things which are ahead. You and I only have the day in front of us. And what happened to us yesterday really doesn't matter. Now, I know that sometimes there are things that happened yesterday that we have to deal with today. So deal with that thing, but don't allow the past to destroy today and what's going to happen in the future. For one thing, you can't do anything about the past. Now, unless, of course, it has to be with an apology or, clearing up something that you did. Other than that, basically forget what happened yesterday. That's what I love about a brand new day. It gives us a brand new opportunity to reinvent ourselves. It gives us another opportunity to learn from what happened yesterday and make sure that it doesn't happen today. A brand new day. And I love how Jeremiah put it in Lamentations 3:23 when he said, "The mercies of God are new every morning, great is his faithfulness." So remember, living in the past, of course, is going to cause you to be in prison. It's going to keep you from progressing forward. It's going to keep you from becoming the person that you always intended to be. Living in the past and caring about what happened in the past will hinder and entangle today and your future. So it can become a prison. So don't allow it to make it happen. Again, number one, caring about what other people think, and also as well, living in the past. These are two prisons that people often find themselves in, especially when you think about the glory of the past. And you say to people, well, this is how I used to be. And the truth of the matter is, that's who you were, but it's not what you are becoming. You want to grow and in grace and in knowledge every single day. You want to become a better person every single day. You want to, of course, embrace the future and whatever it holds, or at least you should. Another prison that people often find themselves is fearing change. We don't want things to change. And many times we fear change because it means that we're going to have to change. It means that we're going to have to see things differently. I live in a small town. And what I discovered, especially when I was doing door to door and I was, running for council, I met many people who had lived there all their lives. And many people said to me, I don't like how things are changing. I just want things to stay the same. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you want things to change? You want to grow. You need to grow. And sometimes growth is subtle and, it doesn't seem to be happening. And other times it can be quite dramatic. Let me give you a little example. Around my home, I have these large trees. They've been around for about 100 years, and it doesn't seem that they're growing very much. But every fall, I discover something. I have a gray water channel or pipe that goes out of my home into the main sewer system. And of course, gray water is the water that is, of course, sewage and other things like that, water that's discarded. And every single fall, the large trees that are in front of my house, what they do is they send their roots down into the gray water pipe. And every year so far, I've had to ask a plumber to go and, basically rotor-root or send his snake down into my gray water pipe so that he can cut out the roots that have gone into that particular pipe. So he does that every year. And it's the only way that I know that those trees are growing. When I was developing a piece of property, I bought some trees that were called hybrid poplars. And I lived at the time in Salmon Arm, which is just above the Okanagan in British Columbia. And it basically has a long growing season. Well, in that particular environment, those trees would grow anywhere from 5 to 8 feet every single year, and they would get big. Well, in about 6 or 7 years, those trees were absolutely huge. And you can see the growth. And so, if you see change in nature, you shouldn't fear change, because fear just simply means that things are growing. There's nothing wrong with taking a risk. There's nothing wrong with change. Change, I know, is uncomfortable, but you should never fear it, because actually change can be a wonderful thing. It can make you a different person. So what do? Well, first of all, you change your mind. Mindset is actually everything, along with attitude. When you realize that you're in a jail, you may find yourself caring about what others think. You might be living in the past. You might be fearing change. But the first thing you do is you need to change your mind. You need to say, these things are actually holding me back. I need to grow. I need to become something different. I need to create a better person out of this. And when you change your mindset, you know what? You change your life. When I was living in the city, I used to go to a church every single day, and I would do certain things in that church. Now, it was interesting that in that particular church, there was about 13 different groups that met. They were either Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And in those groups, these people realized that they had a problem. It could be a substance abuse problem or an alcohol problem. And the first thing that they have to realize is that they are in a jail, that they have a problem. And when they recognize it, they have to also acknowledge that they need to get out of that particular jail, that particular problem, because the reality is it's destroying them and destroying the people around them. And so what they do is they say, okay, I can't do this by myself, so I need help. The first place I need to go is, of course, to acknowledge that I have a problem. And number two, to acknowledge that I can't do this by myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the Lord to help me, and then I'm going to surround myself with people that will make me accountable for what I am doing. They're going to be my accountability partners. I am going to live a transparent life. And when I fail and when I fall, I'm going to tell somebody, I'm going to ask that person to help me. I remember many times going downstairs and seeing 2 or 3 people talking with an individual, and that individual would say, listen, I failed. I fell off the wagon, and I need you to help me. And these people would, put positive statements into this person's life. They say, yeah, you did fall off, but you don't have to stay where you were. They were his or her accountability partner, and they would speak into their lives, and they would allow these people to speak into their lives because they didn't want to stay where they were. There's a story in the Bible, which I'm going to close with today. There were 10 lepers that were living in Samaria at the time when the entire city was surrounded by the Assyrian army. And they realized that the food was running out. And they said, if we stay where we are, we're going to die. if we go out to the enemy and they kill us, well, we're going to die. So they decided to go out to the enemy and basically say, we're going to face what we have to face, because where we are, we're going to die. Well, you need to recognize that when you are in a jail of caring what other people think, living in the past, or fearing change, basically you're going to die in that place. You're going to remain in that place of slavery. And what you want is freedom. So the first thing you need to do is change your mindset. And when you change your mindset and you change your attitude and you make a decision to basically leave where you are to go to a new place. That was what my country was all about. My country was built by pioneers, people who recognized where they weren't growing. And in fact, they were, dying. They were not thriving. So they left where they were and they came to a new land. Our country of Canada, especially Western Canada, was settled by settlers. They were given 160 acres of land around the turn of the century, that being the 20th century or the late 19th century, and said, you come out to Alberta, you come out to Saskatchewan, you come out to Manitoba or British Columbia, and we will give you 160 acres, but you have to stay on that property for 10 years. And if you stay on that property, you will have that property in your family. Well, every single day I drive in the rural part of Alberta, and I see these large farms that have been developed by pioneers. And some of these farms are thousands of acres. For example, my fellow grandfather, my son married what I call a prairie princess. Her grandfather came to Canada during the early 1920s. He was given 160 acres of land, and his descendants have developed this great big huge ranch, this farm. They have 4,000 acres. That's right. Started off with 160 acres and have developed it into, of course, 4,000 acres. My own son has 360 acres, which he bought in the last few years. My son is a rancher and a farmer. He has about 100 head of cattle. This spring alone, he's going to have 55 calves. And they're going to I was talking to my daughter-in-law, and they're going to have about 55 calves, and they're planning to sell about 40 of them to build their herd. They eventually want to have somewhere between 100 and 200, head of cattle. That's not only what my son does. He also farms his land, and he also farms the 4,000 acres for his father-in-law. But it all started with the fact that they knew that they had to make a life. They couldn't stay where they were, and they knew that the only thing that they could do was go to a new place and start over. That is called being a pioneer. So if you want to grow and you want to be new and you want to see change, you got to stay out of these three jails, caring about what others think, living in the past, and fearing change. What you need to do is change your mindset, change your attitude, and when you do that, you change your life. These are my thoughts for you today. My name is Robert Dean Steele. I also want to remind you today that if you like what you're hearing and seeing, of course, press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, as well, check out my YouTube shorts. Every single day, I put together some vignettes, some snapshots, some short, pithy videos about things that, can encourage, elucidate, and illuminate your day. So check those out as well. I did them just before I did this particular broadcast. So thank you for joining me. My name's Robert Dean Steele. Have yourself a great and godly day. And stay out of jail today and grow as a person. Thank you so much.